Good evening and welcome to this half-hour tribute to the good burghers of Fleet Street, and I use the word burghers mistakenly. In the news this week, John Major and Norman Fowler unveil the government's new two-tier accommodation for London's down-and-outs. As plans for further Star Wars films are officially shelved, Obi-Wan Kenobi finds a new job at the UN. And finally, in an effort to draw public attention to the benefits of family planning, Prince Charles models the first all-over condom. On Ian Hislop's team, sad old git, nice but dim, fat slob. His notices haven't always been great, but he's here anyway. Harry Enfield. And on Paul Merton's side, a man whose career has included writing for The Times, The Sunday Times, The Telegraph and The Mail on Sunday, but received the ultimate journalistic accolade when he was fired from The Mirror by Robert Maxwell. Nevertheless, he's still got his pension scheme, so he needs all the work he can get. John Diamond. So we ease ourselves gently into round one. 2 pieces of news footage each to elucidate for us. Ian and Harry. Here's yours.
It's Judith Ward, isn't it?
Yeah, Judith Ward, who said that she said that she'd done this bombing, so they locked her up, and then she said I was lying, and they weren't sure if she was or wasn't.
The police were confused, because usually they make up the confessions. This time she did it, and what do you do?
It's very kind of her.
She got some free flowers for it, too.
Yeah, which we saw, I think.
So that's worth 18 years in prison, a nice bunch of flowers. Cheer you up, doesn't it?
Yeah. For her 18 years imprisonment, she's going to be awarded £215,000. That's less than half what Jeffrey Archer got for not having a spotty back.
and just over what Jason Donovan got for not being gay. Which he isn't.
No, he's not gay.
No. Thank you.
Let's clear that up straight away.
Yeah, I think we probably cleared it up last week, but thank you anyway. Paul and John, who's this woman of the people?
Freeman, Hardy and Willis announced special profits.
No, in fact, this was Imelda Marcos standing for the Filipino SDP, the Save Dulcis party.
I thought she was standing for the My Husband Killed Your Husband party. Cory Aquino stood down. It's her turn, isn't it? I love the juries in America. They let her off. They said that she didn't steal all the money. And given that her husband's salary was sort of 5p a year, the fact that she's the richest woman in the world. American jury, yeah, fine, great, good. Those police guys, they didn't do anything either.
It all makes sense.
And Jeffrey Archer hasn't got a spotty back.
Thank you.
Jason Donovan's still not gay.
How did I know you were going to say that? It's Imelda Marcos, the world's most famous shoe fetishist, who this week put herself up for election as president of her country because she said, I'd be good at selling the Philippines. I thought she'd sold most of it already. One of the candidates for Congress was her son, Bong Bong, standing on a platform of silly names for all. In fact, all public officials in the Philippines have to be addressed by their nicknames. Mr. Nice, Ding Dong, Joker and Ballsy are all standing as MPs. And if you want to speak to the senior law officer, you have to ring up and ask for Ducky. A bit like the DPP's office over here. Ian and Harry, make some sense of this.
That's nice. Is that the tunnel? Oh, yes, it is the tunnel.
That's Vietnam, isn't it? We're sending the boat people back to lovely communist Vietnam.
Which seems a bit of a waste of time, really, because we're going to give everybody back to the communists in 1997, so why send the Vietnamese back now?
Sort of down payment.
Yes.
Is that an advert? Because they've got Saatchi's in to do an ad.
Come to communist China. I've been vote Conservative, get rid of the Labour. Now you've got come to communist Vietnam. It's lovely.
It's the news that the government has decided to repatriate all the Vietnamese boat people in Hong Kong, whether they like it or not. Now, Hong Kong's Secretary for Security, Alistair Asprey, said normal international practices would be followed in the deportations. So presumably women and children will be dragged screaming from detention centres and sedated before being forcibly evacuated. Of course, a far simpler and quicker way of getting them to go home would have been to make Mrs Thatcher the new governor of Hong Kong. Paul and John, a question of faith for you.
Yes, well, this is the speech from the Bishop of Galway, who's saying, well, you can't all be my children.
And that was one of his parishioners going in for confession, I beg your pardon, where her penance was 2 Hail Marys and a quick one round the back of the vestry.
Well, I thought that was, he proved he was still a holy man by performing a miracle and bringing Marlene Dietrich back. But obviously, that time has gone.
Yes, it would have been...
She died this week, did she not?
Yes, she did, hence the joke.
It's just a shame that piece of film happened to go through about a minute before you said it, but
I was quite upset by this Bishop of Galway thing.
Why?
Well, I used to go out with him. I knew nothing about this woman in America. He used to take me to the pictures.
Yes.
Sit in the back row and hold his crook.
The Pope was very upset, and so was Mrs Pope, obviously.
Both of them. It's the News of the World exclusive, printed just one day after the Today newspaper printed exactly the same story, about Bishop Eamon Casey's love child by American Annie Murphy. Apparently he told her, "This is not our baby, it's God's." Taken from the Book of Chat-Up Lines, Chapter 3, verse 24, as used by David Icke. Talking about their relationship, Annie said, "In the first 9 months with Eamon, I was on gossamer wings." Another of Claire Rayner's products. Where
Not an effective contraceptive.
No, don't use it, kids. According to the News of the World, Bishop Casey is now in El Salvador, where he plans to continue his work in some sort of missionary position. So, at the end of that pulsating Premier round, it would appear that, unfortunately, both teams have maximum points. Paul and John have 4, and Ian and Harry have 4. After the break, round 2. But first, by way of an interval, we have the prelude to our caption competition. Each team is accosted by a brief photographic oddity. Paul and John, this is for you. Ian and Harry, this is yours. And in the course of rounds 2 to 5, our panel's job is to cure these photographs' captionless condition by coming up with a witty and apposite interchange. Or think of a caption, anyway. But before that can happen, a tabloid headline or two for us all to feast upon. Paul, a sensational pun for you. Kettle do nicely.
Kettle do nicely. Oh, this is a woman who's pregnant and had this insatiable desire to eat lime scale out of her kettle, and she'd sort of scoop it out and eat it raw. And then it went on further from there, and then she sort of started eating the kettle, and then the electric socket, and then she had to have raw electricity for breakfast. She'd eat 40,000 volts. And in the end, she was sort of lighting up, and she was a hazard to aircraft. Because she lived near Heathrow, and she'd go out of the garden, and the planes would land on her shed.
The first tenth of that was correct. Yes, it's...
I believed the bit about eating lime scale. I thought you said Limeswold to start with.
Even worse, I think. It's nurse Nicola James who developed a craving when she was 4 months pregnant for limescale in kettles. By the time the baby was born, Nicola was eating a pound of limescale a day. It's the baby I feel sorry for. Nicola's milk must have been like polyfiller. John Diamond, who is Queen of the Isles?
Selina Scott. Selina Scott. She's been... she said in the papers that she had made a film about the love she shares with Prince Charles.
Prince Charles is remarrying like most of the royal family, so he thought he'd go for someone who looks exactly like Diana, so he chose Selina Scott.
So he chose a tree. Yeah.
Princess Lady Di.
How unfair. On the tree.
On the tree.
No.
Come on, you would if you had half the show.
Well, I'm very happy with the Bishop of Galway thing.
Had no idea. It's our future monarch, Prince Charles, subject of Selina Scott's film Prince Among Islands. Both Selina and the Prince were looked after in the home of humble crofter Donald Splash McKillop, who watched over Selina with the same affection he had for the Prince. Selina revealed, "We wanted to use film of me at the Cayley, but in every shot, Splash had his hand on my knee." Yes, I bet he did. They don't call him Splash for nothing by the time. Films about royals in the past have always been hugely popular. On one occasion, the electricity board were unable to cope with all the kettles that were switched on in the commercial break. Much the same problem as the sewage system had during Beadle's About every Saturday. Harry, more juicy gossip for you. Savile strip show reported to DPP.
This must be Jimmy Savile at a strip show and reported it to the DPP, who came along, thoroughly enjoyed himself, and then invited Jimmy Savile to go out with him to King's Cross the next night.
With a bit of a Galway.
Or something.
Hugely libellous and untrue.
Is Savile spelt right there?
Yes, it is.
Isn't it? I thought it was Savileobe.
Not after this story.
He did a Jim Will Fix It, where he got kids to perform with the Chipperfields, or people like a child, to perform with beefcake people who took their clothes off.
Fix it?
Jim Will Fix It.
Thanks.
Yes, it's an appalling slur on the moral rectitude of Sir James Savile, whose interest in children has always been entirely above board. The pressure group Family and Youth Concern complained after a 7-year-old boy took part in a male strip show on the Jim Will Fix It programme. For his part, Jimmy Savile said, "I would remind you that only adults have dirty minds, not children." Jimmy Savile is 65 years of age. Ian, an ostensibly dull headline for you. City loses faith in newspapers' millionaire deal.
Oh, I think this might be Fleet Street's finally noticed that Maxwell's dead. No, this is capital F. So this is Adam Faith, who had a column in the Mail on Sunday. And the point of Adam Faith's column was that he could make anyone a millionaire if they gave him a lot of money. And I think it probably made him a millionaire.
You can have, yeah, you can have one.
Thank you.
It's
Can we
the
have
offer.
one for not remembering any of Adam Faith's hits?
You can have a lot for that.
What do you want if you don't want money, was one of his.
It's the offer 20,000 readers couldn't refuse by the Mail on Sunday's city correspondent Adam Faith, that if they each sent in £6,000, he would turn it into £1 million. The Daily Mirror used to run a scheme like that, only you sent them £1 million in pension contributions and they turned it into £6,000. The unusual idea of employing a former pop star as a city analyst was nonetheless fiercely defended by the paper's financial editor, Dusty Springfield. Which happily denotes the end of this second round, and the sorry situation is that Ian and Harry are floundering now with 6, and Paul and John have reached the dizzy heights of 9. And so we meander down the leafy glades of recollection, where we happen upon our rather quaint, if archaic, archive round.
Leafy glades of recollection.
How did I know? 2 pieces of broadcast history per team. Ian and Harry, it's the traditional what happened next for you.
This is your do-it-yourself political meeting. This is Paul Tyler, your local Liberal Alliance candidate for this area.
When the Beaconsfield by-election was announced 3 months ago, the Alliance leaders believed that Paul Tyler might be able to continue the sparkling string of Liberal and Social Democratic by-election successes.
He said we're having a do-it-yourself meeting. So he was the speaker and he was the audience.
Nobody turned up, basically, is it? He just stood there. Nobody turned up. A dog came along and pissed against the car.
It's a very good guess.
And doubled
actually.
the membership.
It's a good guess. Let's see what happened next.
My friends are coming round the doors. If you want any questions answered, I'll be pleased to come to your door. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody may have here.
There's one question, is what on earth are you doing there?
Paul and John, who's this nascent Maradona?
Oh, look, it's Jonathan Ross. And
No, this is Jimmy Savile, auditioning striptease artist for the Chipperfields. It's Roy Hattersley, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes.
For it is he.
Yes, Roy Hattersley, I think, would be the answer there.
Well, let's reveal
And then he
all.
lost.
It's that telling walk, isn't it?
Look at that. He's crap. He's not very good, is he, poor chap?
Playing like Brian Robson there.
Is Roy Hattersley playing football in a school playground? I bet he was the last to be picked.
We're not having a big git again.
So, at the end of that retrospective round, the current position is that Ian and Harry still have a painfully limp 8, and Paul and John have a reassuringly firm 11. And so we lovingly caress our penultimate round, that which goes by the name of Odd One Out. 4 disparate personalities, one of which sits very much apart. What's the reason, and who is the Sharon Stone? Paul, wrap your legs around this bunch. Winston Churchill, Paulie Yates, Steffi Graf, and Sun editor Kelvin Mackenzie.
Oh.
Well, Steffi Graf and, what's her name, Paula Yates, their dads were sort of involved in risque romances. I mean, not really scandals, but...
This isn't a leg over question. I mean, all those people can read apart from Kelvin Mackenzie. They were all journalists, apart from Steffi Graf. Churchill, Paula Yates, she did a book on underwear. Makes her a journalist.
Ish.
Oh, Kelvin's not a journalist. Stupid. Forget that, sorry.
You suddenly realised your mistake. No, well, if none of you got it, then I'll tell you. The answer is, in fact, that they're all nudists, except Kelvin Mackenzie, who likes everyone else to be in the nude.
Well, Churchill isn't a nudist now.
He was.
I don't know what state he's in.
Oh, yeah, he turned up a Walter in the nude. I remember that. Stalin, Roosevelt, Churchill with no clothes on in the middle. Well-known nudist. Oh, how stupid of us, the nudist.
No, there's a story that the president came in, Roosevelt came in to his room, and Churchill was in the bath. And he just got up out of the bath. My dear.
What was that he was putting in his mouth?
He did. And the president was quite taken aback.
I bet he was.
Because Churchill was not a small man.
And
Anyway.
how do you know this? Is it an old flame of
It
yours?
was on telly. If you watch that series on Churchill on BBC Two, you would
Is
know.
that that programme called Churchill's Knob?
I'm glad you've all
Is it
realised
that
your mistake.
they're all nudists?
Well, it is, but unfortunately you have to give me the answer before I give you it. Otherwise I'd happily
Paula
give you 2
Yates
points.
isn't a nudist.
Paula Yates, by her own confession, likes to do the hoovering in the Altogether, which may go some way to explain the sudden increase in window cleaners in the area. So being married to Bob Geldof must put you off clothes for life. John, perhaps familiar few for you. Terry Dix, MP, family entertainer Harry Enfield, Jeremy Isaacs, and Sir George Young, MP.
They're all sober.
Dixie
except
is the one who-
the Harry Enfield one. He's completely drunk. It's like one of those-
Anti-smoking? No, I don't know.
Any ideas, Harry?
Yeah, I think that we all like the opera, except for Terry Dix, who doesn't think that it should be funded and things.
May I just say
But
I'm
the
going to be
rest of us-
sick at this point? We
But
all
the-
like the opera.
We do. We think it's absolutely marvellous. We really think it's lovely.
Well, you've got 2 points.
You don't want to go
Yeah.
and see Turandot, you want to
Shut
go and
up.
see the coronation of the choir.
Look, we got 2 points.
The answer is that 3 of them are keen opera buffs. Doesn't mean to say that they go there in the nude, I presume. The odd one out is Terry Dix, who has publicly called for all subsidising of opera to end. He said that opera is just a fat Italian singing in Italian dressed as a woman. And also that bingo is just as worthy of public subsidy as opera. So we look forward to the opening in Covent Garden of the Royal Bingo House. Sir George Young made the headlines when he described the homeless as people you step on when you leave the opera. He later apologised profusely and stated that what he meant to say was the homeless are people you step over when you leave the opera. That's much better. Harry, an imposing foursome for you. Queen Victoria, Mrs. Thatcher, Nelson Mandela, and Otis Redding.
Help. the Queen Vic in EastEnders.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela House in Only Fools and Horses.
Very good.
There's a restaurant called Thatcher's.
Otis Redding, there's a lift named after him.
Am I right?
Yes, you are right. Yes, they all have places named after them except Otis Redding, who purely coincidentally, of course, has the same name as the Berkshire town of Otis. And the Thatcher Peninsula is a lonely promontory on the remote Antarctic island of South Georgia. I wonder if someone's trying to drop her a gentle hint. And finally, in this round, Ian, particularly tricky one for you. Adnan Khashoggi, Mark Thatcher, backed by popular demand Robert Maxwell, and Sooty.
Well, what's the answer, Harry? Well, according to Sooty here, yes, the answer is there is a connection with arms deals, and I'd better be slightly careful here. Maxwell was a crook and an arms dealer, and he's dead and he can't sue. Adnan Khashoggi was let off by one of those wonderful New York juries. No, you're not a crook. God, no. You can get out free. Anyway, he's an arms dealer. Mark Thatcher obviously isn't. He's amassed a large personal fortune over the last 10 years through personal merit, and not through being the son of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. To make that clear. He's a good friend of a man called Wafik Saeed, who is an arms dealer, but that doesn't mean anything. Can't judge a bloke by his friends. Oh, no. And there's Sooty, who supplies a lot of the TOW missiles to Iraq.
Well, I think you've got it, really, haven't you? Unless you're seriously suggesting that Sooty is a major arms dealer. It's Sooty, as all the others have been involved in the buying and selling of arms, whereas Sooty's only contact with arms is when he has one stuck up him. Now, according to The Observer, a report detailing a £10 million arms payoff to Mark Thatcher may have been hushed up by the Comptroller and Auditor General. And Mark Thatcher said that as far as he was concerned, he was only responsible to the Almighty, although quite what his mother's got to do with it isn't clear. Which brings us wafting dreamily to the end of this round, at which point, well, Paul and John now have a really quite hopeless 11, and Ian and Harry have a hugely enviable 14. Ooh. So let's stumble legless into our final missing words round. One set of headlines per team, but with the somewhat disconcerting feature of having one or two words blanked out. Provide the missing words or a suitable alternative is what's required. Leaders go last, so Paul and John, stand by your beds. Postmen are allowed to wear what?
Shorts. They're allowed to wear shorts.
They
Cats.
are. And the
Hats on their legs to distract the dogs.
Shorts is the right answer. Well done. A long time ago. Next, the Queen joins what?
Everton?
Queen! She joins Queen at Freddie Mercury's game.
And gives them her name.
Debate?
Dots.
Is this a Euro answer?
It is a Euro answer.
Yeah. Joins her husband on holiday, unlike any other member of the royal family.
Now, that would be news.
Yes, that would be a first. Yes, I'll give you 2 points because you said Euro and you said debate. E.C. Row is in fact the answer.
Yeah.
Next, Pope urged to probe what?
Bishop of Galway.
So
hold on, isn't that guy who's about to be beatified, who's about to become a saint, the Nazi, Saint Nazi?
Oh, Princess Michael
very, very low. No, I think we're getting further away from the answer. It's Love Child
finance.
Cash. Next, Ashdown swings where?
Both ways.
I was going to say like a pendulum do.
Were you? Well, you wouldn't have got any points if you...
Is it too right?
Towards Labour. Towards Labour.
It's towards Labour. I'm afraid John got in there slightly before you did. And lastly, Bishop says what in his...
Paul Merton.
Love Child.
I'll give you one for Child's Son is actually the answer. Very good. Right, Ian and Harry, here's your little
there.
lot.
No, it
You're
was
5 points behind. So Bush finds
Marlene
what amid
Dietrich.
rubble?
An old bus telly?
It's a lovely image. But
Video, pair of jeans,
no.
Dan Quayle.
Hope is the extraordinary
Hope?
from John.
How did
Actually
he
got it
find
right.
hope in the rubble of Los Angeles?
It was Bob Hope.
Bob.
I've seen that.
Next, Fergie will tell Andrew what?
Nothing.
It's over.
It was nothing.
It's over, isn't it? You
The
know?
big
It's
Texans
over,
are
but I
personal
think
friends.
John got there again.
Oh,
before.
yeah,
It's
but you see, you
extraordinary.
let him butt in. You're biased.
Next, Mellor adopts a what stance in dealings with BBC?
Limp, lovely.
Prone position with rifle.
I reckon a cautious.
Questioning stance
Questioning.
is in fact the answer. Next, all schools to what by the end of the decade?
Close. Oh, that's all right.
Sorry.
All schools to opt out.
Opt out is the right answer.
I thought I was going to say teach neighbours. Last week's story.
And finally, Tories surprise themselves with spectacular what?
Spectacular failure to come up with any new ideas in the Queen's speech. Nope.
Satirical, but
Not
getting
funny.
any marks.
Is it triple somersault?
It's a very good guess. It's actually games.
Spectacular trousers.
But triple somersault is certainly nowhere near. Which non-existent display of mental agility brings us to the end of tonight's contest, and the rather entertaining result is that this week's disaster areas are Ian and Harry with 16, and this week's enterprise zones are Paul and John with 23. So, bravo to our winners, Scheisskopfer to our losers. Before they make their way back to the arches underneath Waterloo Station, there's a little matter of our caption competition. Ian and Harry, what did you come up with for this then?
It's the man saying, so we finally found a model policeman.
I reckon it's a bill producer. The bill producer denies wooden acting.
I thought it might be Prime Minister's surprise visit boosts police morale.
Paul and John, what about yours?
Duchess of York flies back to refresh her memory.
I think it's her saying, so these are the crown jewels, isn't it?
I thought it might be PM surprise visit boosts police morale.
Or is that Coup Stark still up there? On which sweet note we say thank you to our guests Ian Hislop and Harry Enfield, Paul Merton and John Diamond, and I leave you with news from Tokyo that there are fears that the Japanese craze for raw food may be getting out of hand. After complaints that too many professional footballers empty their noses onto the pitch, certain players take matters into their own hands. And Nicholas Fairbairn is to leave politics. He's landed the lead role in Rupert the Movie. Good night.
Terrorism Week continues now on Documentary with the concluding part of Embassy Siege. Terrorism Week. Sounds like some kind of perverse holiday, doesn't it? Anyway, here on People, Louis Theroux enters the world of American porn. Seeing is believing.